Hello, security champions. Welcome to the next session of the Security Architecture and Design Review. I am Ashish, your trainer for this course. So let's start. Let's find out what is SAR. SAR stands for Security Architecture and Review. So Security Architecture and Design Review is a comprehensive process that focuses on assessing and enhancing the security aspect of a system, application, or network infrastructure. It is a critical step in the development and deployment of secure systems. The primary goal of security architecture and design review is to identify potential vulnerabilities and weaknesses in the design and architecture of a system before it's deployed. So just notice here, all this process, what we'll do here, it is getting started even the system is not in production. So the goal is here to identify the vulnerabilities, the weak spots as early as possible in the development life cycle. So like by conducting this review, organizations can proactively address security concerns and make necessary changes to ensure that CIA, the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of their system and data is safe. So the security architecture review includes like performing threat modeling to find potential security flaw and threats, review of architecture diagram and design specifications to find out the weak spots in the design itself, review of the design security safeguard and preventive actions like security controls, evaluation, recognizing potential design flaw while you reviewing the designing part of it, documentation of evaluation result and recommendations for enhancement. So as a security architect, when you are done with your evaluations, you need to give your recommendations based on the finding which you have in your report. And the overall aim is to increase the overall system security is here. So it's not something you are just looking one part of it. You are responsible when you are doing the security architecture review, you are performing a modeling and everything else for an application. You are the sole responsible from end to end, like from system, application, network, dev environment, and everything else. So the key component of the SAR it's include, and these all are generic. Just keep in mind, these all are generic. It is not something that you need to follow what I have mentioned here in this slide. It is all generic, and it may change person to person, application to application, but these all are standards. So I mean, these all are generic, so it may change for person to person, and maybe the to application as well. So the planning and threat modeling, security requirement, architecture analysis, security control and evaluation, data flow analysis, access control and privileges, threat mitigation and recommendations, documentation and reporting, right? So what will happen, how to start? So when we talk about the planning and threat modeling, how to start, what to do? So like initiating the SAR for an applications, like the scope comes first. So define the scope. So for the review, like include specific systems, application or network infrastructure that will be evaluated, identify the goals or objective of the review, such as identifying vulnerabilities, ensuring compliance with the security standard, and enhancing overall security posture. So this is the definition, or this could be the definition of your scope, right? Next part of it, before starting for threat modeling, we gather the information. So obtain relevant documentations, including architecture diagram, any design specifications which you have previously or the team has shared with you, data flow diagram, which normally called the DFD diagrams too, network diagrams, and any existing security documentations that could be your earlier pen testing report, your SOC report, or your ISO report. That could be anything. Understanding the business requirement, functionality, and data flow of the system being reviewed. So this is one of the necessary parties here to understand the business requirement. What's your goal of doing it? Like as you mentioned, you wanted to comply with something for any standard against, like HIPAA, SOC 2, PCI DSS, or something else. What's the goal, right? And then functionality and that complete data flow, how your application data is moving from one to another point of it, right? Then we'll move to the threat modeling. So identify potential threats and attack vectors that the system could be exposed to, consider both technical and non-technical threats, create a threat model that outlines the various component, data flows, interactions, and potential vulnerability in the systems. And next come to this security requirement review. So this includes kind of evaluate the systems against established security requirement, including regulatory compliances, industry standards, and best practices, and identify any gaps between the existing design and the required security standards. Right. So let's say you are the SOC 2 and you wanted to move for the SOC 3, right? So what's the gap? What's the requirement for the SOC 3 and where you stand as of now with the SOC 2? Or let's consider you are already a SOC 2 certified organization and now you wanted to opt for the ISO standard to ISO 27001, right? So what's the gap? I mean, what control as of now already exists in the place and what others you may require? So what's the gap between all these tools, right? So now the next step comes the architecture analysis. So they review the overall architecture of the systems, including network topology, component, communication protocol, and data storage mechanism, identify security sensitive component and critical data flows, right? So like you can look for what kind of encryptions you are using. Are you using TLS version 1, TLS version 2, right? And how your network topologies, right? Like what does AWS services, or if you're on cloud platform you're utilizing, what kind of controls is already there are, right? Now, next will be the data flow analysis. So trace the flow of sensitive data toward the system of identify potential point of the exposure or unauthorized access. So like which kind of the authentication mechanism you are using, is that your authentication mechanism is weak, or if to take example, if you're using any auth 2.0 or any version of it or anything, what's their where they stand as of now? Is there any public vulnerabilities available for them or not, or what it is, right? So all this stuff. Now, access control and privileges analysis. So evaluate user access control mechanism and privileges management, identify and excessive privileges, improper access control or potential privileges, escalation vulnerabilities, and all this stuff. So that I think you'll get in your pen testing reports, which you have you may have done earlier, or maybe you're going to do, right? So now threat mitigation recommendations. So this is one of the crucial part of any security architect when they have the analysis done and they have the all the input required and they have all the findings on the paper. Now, giving the recommendations, the right recommendations to the development team with the proper suggestions and mitigation steps is the one part of the security architect. Right. So based on the finding from the review, propose security enhancement and recommendations to mitigate identified risk and vulnerabilities, provide tactical guidance on architecture changes, design modification, or additional security measures. So normally when it comes like take example of XSS problems. Whenever it comes, normally people say, hey, just input validation, you do input validation, you do output encoding, you use WAF, all those recommendations. But what about how to make a dev team to understand what actually they do? So when you say input validation, do input sanitize your inputs, what actually they need to do? So you need to be very specific. You need to give them a complete recommendations step by steps to make them understand, to make their job easy, so it become easy for you at a later stage, right? And another part of is documentation and reporting. So documenting the finding, recommendations, and actions items in comprehensive report, clearly communicating the security issues, potential impact, and suggested solutions to relevant stakeholders, to like project manager who are owning the product, or the data owner who are owning the applications, right? Your CISO, CIO, that could be anyone. So you need to give all these recommendations in your report and make sure that you are communicating effectively, right? So this is all about SAR, and thanks for watching this video.